After clearing the ancestral dragon's nest, the player Shin Sang-yeon rests atop the defeated creature. With his armor in tatters, he leans firmly on his sword, exhausted from the battle. Then he shouts to the heavens, questioning why he still tries so hard at the age of 55. Even after 30 years as a swordsman, his greatest achievement had only been ranking among the top 100 in his country. Among so many players in the world, he saw himself as just another one, until a reward caught him by surprise. A skill book appeared before him, and the warrior wondered if he could eat it, as he did with artifacts. Soon, an intense light shone from the item, reflecting on his face. As the notification from his constellation appeared, a figure emerged from a portal of energy while he held the book. The entity congratulated him for his hard work, praising his final blow in the battle. In response, the warrior thanked his constellation for contracting him despite being only a third-rate swordsman. His skill promised to double his stats at level 850, but he was only level 650. Because of the high requirements, he had yet to gain any benefit from the contract. Then the constellation encouraged him to eat the book, and the warrior confirmed he would. With the item glowing intensely in his hand, he prepared to devour whole. His only innate ability was devour artifacts, a power he had tested in the past by cooking and eating items. He continued his experiments by frying the artifacts, but still felt no difference. After all those useless experiments, 30 years had passed on his journey. Only by using mana synchronization on an artifact of the right rank did he finally learn how to activate his power. However, this discovery came too late, as other players became stronger the moment they awakened. Back in the present, the warrior stared at the skill book in his hands without saying a word. Sitting on the ground, he wondered why the item had no instructions, while the constellation doubted it was even a real book. The entity admitted it had little information on that skill and apologized for not being able to help. It suggested trying mana synchronization again since there was still time, something the warrior immediately questioned. He yelled at the constellation, reminding it that he was almost 60 and didn't have much life left. Confused, the entity listened as he explained he could already have grandchildren, and that, unlike it, humans die early. After the constellation apologized, he reassured it, saying it had done nothing wrong. He simply said his life was full of regrets, leaving the entity in silence. The memory of the person who once saved him never left, and he tried his best to become like them. Now, however, the warrior felt too tired and too old to continue chasing that goal. His only wish was to be a bit younger again, a wish that left the constellation silent. Behind the book, the entity simply watched him with a faint smile. Then he announced his retirement and canceled the contract, releasing energy that wrapped around him. Suddenly, the constellation floated above him, glowing brightly as energy surrounded his entire body. As his body dissolved into light, he called out to the entity, not understanding what was happening. That scene became his last memory as a 55-year-old man, while the constellation used the essence of his experiments. Right after, the world around him shattered into fragments and the word regression appeared in the darkness. On a TV broadcast, reporter Park Jamin explained that dungeons and portals were the environments where players worked. In addition, CEO Han Hanjong confirmed the information, adding that dungeons acted as stepping stones for players. Sitting beside the reporter, she continued, describing portals as connections to unknown regions. Meanwhile, in his room, a young man watched the interview on his TV. Sitting on his bed, Sang-yeon cleaned a dagger, confirming to himself that he had truly regressed. Although he understood the situation, 4 days had passed and he still felt confused about returning 30 years to the past. After losing consciousness, he had suddenly woken up in his old apartment from 30 years ago. Now his body was no longer that of a 55-year-old man, but his 25-year-old self, with all his memories intact. Though he didn't understand why, he concluded that his regression could only be a miracle from his constellation. Still confused, he decided it was time to head out and work, spinning his dagger in his hand. He lifted the Venomoth dagger, a bronze artifact he had managed to obtain back then. Although its rank was low, he knew about its hidden ability and prepared to activate it. Then a system notification appeared to determine the item's absorption rate, applying a bonus from his previous use. Mana synchronization with the dagger began as the hidden ability of the artifact mattered most to him. Immediately, his body was wrapped in energy and transported to the rift of unconsciousness. In that mental space, he explained he had to enter there to devour an artifact, a process always unpredictable. Suddenly, a plate of food appeared in the darkness, glowing intensely before him. The preparation to absorb the dagger was complete, and the item materialized as a roasted chicken. The system identified it as grilled chicken with olive oil. The warrior was relieved it was normal food, fearing it might have turned into swamp centipede stew. He took a bite, and the absorption of the Venomoth dagger finally began. After finishing, Sang-yeon permanently gained an agility bonus and the hidden skill Demonic Strike. Back in the material plane, the dagger disintegrated into particles, vanishing forever after full absorption. In his room, the young man looked at the system screen and lamented the item's destruction. Having obtained the useful skill he had planned, he decided it was finally time to go out and act. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Dungeon Portal No. 85 opened, awaiting Yoon Dae-kyung's team. Soon, the head porter approached the team leader, who asked why he had come. The man explained that the rookie Shin Sang-yeon had gone out but was soon told he would join the player team. Still not understanding the change, the porter asked if the young man would really join the main team instead of support. Dae-kyung confirmed he had given the final approval, prompting protests that Sang-yeon was just newly awakened. The man continued arguing that the rookie hadn't finished the academy and would disrupt the team's balance, but the team leader cut him off with a firm grip, calling him by his rank. Then he reminded him that he managed all assignments, forcing the porter to apologize. As he walked away with his companion, Dae-kyung complained that porters should never be given the chance to talk about team balance. With a grin, he added that if anyone were to die, it would be the rookie, and that would serve to preserve their own value. The other player then questioned why he had accepted the newcomer, surprising the leader with the doubt. While the two mocked what a level 1 rookie could possibly do, Sang-yeon approached from behind to greet them. With a smile, he introduced himself and announced that he would be working as a player from that day on. In response, the porters glared at him with disdain, while the team leader and his companion simply smiled. Faced with the hostile reactions he had already expected, the rookie merely noted how none of them even tried to hide their expressions. Dae-kyung then welcomed him, commenting that he thought the boy would be late for his first day. At that moment, his expression shifted and his gaze focused on the weapon the young man carried. He soon asked if it was a longsword, and Sang-yeon confirmed, explaining that he had learned to use it through YouTube videos. Even after being warned that longswords are hard to handle, the rookie assured them he would do his best to protect himself and asked for their trust. In response, Dae-kyung laughed and gripped his shoulder, praising his spirit as exactly what a man should have. With a battle cry, he then announced the start of the dungeon invasion, motivating everyone to give it their all. As the whole group advanced toward the portal, the leader ordered everyone to be on standby at the entrance. Once inside the dungeon, the other players chatted about how many monsters they could kill that day. Next to Sang-yeon, the team leader simply walked in silence. Then he mocked the idea of learning to fight from YouTube, doubting the rookie was taking the dungeon seriously at all. To him, the newcomer was just an arrogant fool with a death wish for becoming a player. According to their invasion strategy, that orc dungeon was known as the Wailing Wall for rookies. With a scornful smile, Dae-kyung concluded that the stupid fool would soon learn his place. Suddenly, the leader's expression changed completely, as the words "stupid fool" echoed around him, because the entire team was now silently staring at the trail of defeated orcs scattered on the ground. After the battle, the rookie simply stood with his back to everyone, gazing at the destruction. Everyone knew orcs from games and fantasy tales, which created a familiar image of them. And because of this familiarity, a common prejudice had formed among players. Most simply believed that all orcs were inherently weak creatures. Compared to monsters like dragons, they were considered stupid and only violent. Because of this, arrogant rookie players often faced them without thinking of the consequences. Then one of those players charged in, ignoring the danger of the creature before him. Suddenly, his face was grabbed by the orc's hand before he could even react. As he was lifted into the air, the man struggled to break free from the monster's grasp. This massive difference in physical strength earned them the nickname Wailing Wall among rookies. Back in the present, Yoon Dae-kyung's team advanced quietly through the dungeon corridor. Soon, the soldier turned to warn the rookie that he would get no special treatment. As he walked off, another teammate criticized him for acting like a veteran. But with a smile on his face, he simply replied that he would do his best on the mission. That same player shouted back that he shouldn't just try, he should do a good job. Sang-yeon only glanced back at him for a moment without saying a word. Turning to another companion, he asked if he could fight on the front line, leaving the man perplexed. The veteran just stared at him for a moment, not understanding the situation. Suddenly, an orc appeared in the corridor, throwing the group into immediate panic. Without hesitation, the soldier pushed the rookie aside and volunteered to handle the creature. He quickly blocked the axe strike with his shield. Then he yelled at the newcomer for being slow and reckless in battle. But the young man calmly replied that he didn't need help and told him to look forward. Irritated, the player shouted that he should be grateful, just as the orc's axe came down again. At the last second, the man's eyes widened. With a swift move, the team leader appeared and blocked the attack that would have hit him. The impact was so strong that the orc was thrown back, cracking the floor as it landed. Watching the scene, the leader shouted for everyone to get it together and stop fooling around. Then one of the tanks apologized and moved in, telling everyone to fall back while he handled the monster. He soon blocked another strike from the orc, which roared a word in its native tongue. Holding his guard, the player confidently declared that such an attack was nothing to him. Taking the opening, he pierced the enemy's chest with his sword. Seeing the scene, the team began to celebrate the victory, believing the monster was dead. However, the creature only growled with a grin as its eyes glowed intensely. Even with the sword stuck in its chest, it raised its axe for another attack. The player blocked the blow with difficulty, realizing the earlier strike hadn't killed it. From a distance, Sang-yeon watched the fight silently. Even as the highest level player there, the tank couldn't land a critical hit on the monster. Then the warrior gathered his strength and prepared a counterattack with his sword. His strike hit the orc squarely, but the creature still resisted the blow. With one final decisive hit, the tank finally defeated the enemy on his own, to everyone's surprise. Though exhausted, he turned to the group with a smile. acting as if the fight had been nothing. His team rushed to praise him, calling him a reliable leader. But their celebration was suddenly cut short by a roar from deeper down the corridor. A horde of red, armored orcs appeared, led by an imposing figure. The team panicked upon recognizing them as elite orcs, unsure how to react. Sensing the danger, the team leader suggested a tactical retreat for everyone's safety. However, the young warrior stepped forward and asked if he could try fighting the horde. Shocked, one soldier scolded him while the others just watched in confusion. As Yoon Dae-kyung tried to dissuade him, the rookie simply charged forward at high speed. He used his sword as a support to vault straight toward the first orc in line. With a single vertical slash, he split the elite monster in half. The team members just stared, stunned that he had defeated the creature in a single strike. Even after such a feat, his status window still showed him as a level 1 player. At that moment, the orc leader roared and prepared to attack. The creature leaped at him, trying to crush him with a powerful punch. Gripping his sword, he remarked that he now had much more experience. He then cut down several enemies at once as he passed through them. Soon after, another creature lunged at him with its axe. With a grin, he asked if they knew. After killing another, he wondered aloud how many he had slain before. Unable to believe what they were seeing, the players questioned if that was really Shin Sang-yeon. But the horde wiped out, the swordsman turned toward the last remaining monster in the corridor. Standing before him was the only survivor, an orc fully clad in armor. The creature charged with its weapon, ready to crush him. But he dodged at the last second as its strike shattered the ground. Then he countered with a horizontal slash that cut through the air. However, the attack struck the orc's armor without piercing it. Seeing this, the team leader shouted that the attack hadn't worked. Taking advantage of the opening, the creature swung again at him. Yet the swordsman just smiled and told him not to be so dramatic. As soon as he touched the creature with his hand, he activated one of his special skills. The monster's body froze for an instant, unable to move. Watching the immobilized creature, he simply told it to stay still like that. Even paralyzed, the orc only opened its mouth, unable to react. Taking the chance, the young man finished the last orc with a single strike of his sword. With the battle over, the whole group just stood frozen, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Looking down the corridor filled with defeated orcs, they all remembered he was supposed to be just a rookie. Moreover, the paralysis skill he used was more effective than any experienced players. They also questioned his incredible swordsmanship, unusual for someone newly awakened. Even so, Yoon Dae-kyung couldn't believe the skill had worked perfectly on an armored orc. Not knowing what to say, he simply watched the young man turn with a faint smile. Right then, a system window appeared before him, announcing he had leveled up and received a new title. Opening his status window, he saw that the unexpected title granted him an evasion bonus. A new notification appeared stating he had a bonus point to allocate to his attributes. Without hesitation, he used the point to increase his luck stat, essential for his future plan. While still reviewing his stats, Yoon Dae-kyung approached and questioned him about his identity. The man then directly asked how he had obtained such a rare skill. With an awkward smile, the rookie simply replied that he was lucky enough to get it when he awakened. Irritated by the answer, a player shouted that it made no sense at all. After calming down, he looked at the young man's sword and suggested it had all just been a stroke of luck. Yoon Dae-kyung then assumed that his sword must be a diamond rank artifact or higher. With a smile, Sang-yeon offered his weapon for the man to inspect, leaving him surprised by the proposal. As soon as he took the sword, the system window revealed it was just a common item with no special effects. In disbelief, the man shouted upon realizing that the skill used had truly come from the player himself, not from the weapon. He could only lament that he hadn't gotten such a good skill even after 2 years of exploring dungeons. Suddenly, one of the scouts shouted that the dungeon's mid-boss was just ahead. With a serious expression, the team leader simply nodded and ordered everyone to keep moving forward. As he passed the young man, he warned him not to get overconfident just because he had handled the weaker monsters. He then stated that his skill would be useless against the demon orc they were about to face. With a faint smile, the young man remembered the real reason he had returned to that team. He then called out to the leader, who turned and asked if the rookie was scared. Sang-yeon immediately asked if he could keep the artifact if he defeated the demon orc alone. With a bright smile, he confirmed that the item was the reward he wanted for killing the monster. The artifact he desired was the Crimson Stone, an item that could only be obtained by defeating demon orcs. Even after killing hundreds of them, the chance of obtaining the stone was extremely low. In his past life, he remembered watching another team acquire the item after his own group had failed the mission. Back then, he had only watched the scene without really understanding what was happening. Soon, he heard the other group celebrating, talking about how valuable the artifact would be on the market. It was at that moment he discovered that the stone granted its wielder the rare ability called the Delay. Now in the present, Sang-yeon knew that this was the skill he needed the most. Meanwhile, the entire group stood in formation before the gate leading to the boss room. But he remembered that the team divided items based on contribution, which left him free to act alone. As they waited, the leader of the other team just glanced at him from the side without saying a word. Even so, Sang-yeon knew perfectly well that he needed that ability for his future, though his arrogance wouldn't be well received. Because of this, the other members surrounded him and called him crazy. They then asked if he thought he was just for defeating a few orcs. The leader intervened and after a moment told the rookie to do whatever he wanted. Surprised, the other players questioned his decision, but the commander added it would only count if they failed. He then pointed at Sang-yeon, emphasizing that he could only try alone if the team was defeated first. With a smile, the young man accepted the condition and asked if he should stay out of the battle for now. Without turning, the player agreed, while the rest of the team marched toward the room. As they walked, the leader grew irritated at the rookie's arrogance over a single skill. Because of that, he shoved open the boss room doors, determined to clear the dungeon just to shut the boy up. Upon entering, he declared that battle experience was what truly mattered here. Suddenly, the commander stopped in his tracks with a surprised look on his face. Right ahead, a towering figure stood in the darkness of the room. In that instant, the torches on the walls lit up, illuminating the entire place. The light revealed the dungeon boss, a demon orc with a crimson stone embedded in its chest. The moment he saw the monster, the leader ordered everyone to get ready for combat. Based on his intel, he instructed the team to surround the creature and attack from behind. However, with a smirk, he planned to defeat the boss quickly so Sang-yeon wouldn't get a chance to fight. He then shouted that he would take the lead and charge at the monster with the team. But in the very next moment, he found himself standing still, covered in blood, unable to understand what had happened. Lying on the ground and drenched in blood, the leader just looked back in confusion. Meanwhile, Sang-yeon only sighed from afar at the team's reckless tactic of charging head-on. With the entire team defeated, he remembered that it was this same mistake that had caused their failure in the past. Wounded and terrified, the team members realized they would all die if they stayed. The commander regretted following the advice he heard, having underestimated the creature's power. He quickly got back up and shouted that they didn't need to kill the boss, ordering a retreat. Hearing the order of Sang-yeon just gave a wide grin. Seeing his reaction, the man turned to the rookie and asked what his problem was. Then he ordered everyone to retreat so they could exploit the monster's limited vision and flank it. During the retreat, he stopped for a moment to speak directly to Shin Sang-yeon. At that moment, he warned him not to blame him if he ended up dying in the coming fight. The young man simply replied not to worry as he gripped the hilt of his sword firmly. With a confident smile, he declared he would not die today. Right then, the demon orc roared and charged at him. Even with an aura surrounding him, his stats were far too low to win in a direct clash. But using all of his accumulated experience, he deflected the monster's axe strike with his sword. The creature only growled as its attack was blocked. From a distance, the team leader watched in disbelief that the rookie had dodged the axe. Standing before the monster, Sang-yeon just flicked his hand, admitting that dodging was all he could do for now. Then the crimson stone in the creature's chest began to glow intensely. The young man focused his gaze on the artifact, for there was a clear reason behind his obsession. Combining his paralysis skill with the stone's delay ability could create a special effect. With his unique skill of devouring artifacts, he could stack the stun time continuously. This strategy would give him infinite paralysis, so he simply provoked the monster to come at him. The creature growled in response to his provocation. The demon orc roared and raised its axe for another attack. With a grin on his face, the young man said this was exactly what he wanted to see. As the creature struck, he dodged to find an opening in its defense. The axe smashed into the ground with crushing force. Taking advantage of the opening, he touched the monster and activated his skill, paralyzing it for 2 seconds. From afar, the commander was shocked to see that the skill even worked on bosses. At that moment, Sang-yeon casually commented on how simple orcs were, even the demon type. Suddenly, an aura surged from the monster, completely catching the rookie off guard. The creature broke free from the stun and kicked the boy. The shockwave sent him flying backward, leaving a long trail on the ground. Propping himself up on his sword, he remembered a crucial detail he had forgotten. The demon orc's self-regeneration ability canceled the stun effect early. Now he had to wait 15 seconds to use the skill again, which only reinforced his need for the item. Unable to rely on paralysis, he decided he would simply have to defeat the creature in direct combat. He dodged another axe strike, remarking that it seemed simple enough. As the battle continued, one of the players told the leader they really needed to retreat now. The teammate pointed out that even the rookie's skill wasn't working, leaving the commander confused. Even with lower stats and without the stun, the boy kept fighting. The leader couldn't understand how he could wear that expression, while Sang-yeon suggested it was time to end the fight. He said he had already been through situations like this before as he prepared for his next move. At that moment, he decided to focus all of his strength on a single point instead of trying to cut the enemy. As the monster charged forward, he prepared to use its own force against it. His sole objective was to pierce through the demon orc's defense with a precise strike. With a flawless movement, his sword pierced the crimson stone in the monster's chest, defeating it instantly. Right after his victory, he leveled up twice and received the title of Demon Hunter. Upon checking his stats, he noticed that he now had 2 titles for having fought alone. Then he turned and saw the team approaching in silence. The leader and the other players only stared at him, still unable to process what had just happened. Wanting to avoid complications in the future, he thought of a way to deal with them. Suddenly, he began acting as if he were exhausted, pretending he had nearly died in the battle. The commander looked confused, while one of the team members mocked his supposed contribution. Soon after, the man leaned in, trying to understand what the rookie was doing. At that moment, Sang-yeon stayed silent, locking eyes with the team leader. With a serious expression, he offered the commander a chance to preserve his honor before the team. Then the crimson stone floated out from the monster's body and stopped in front of the player. The leader quietly admitted that this was his complete defeat. He then turned to the team and announced that they had defeated the boss, ordering them to prepare for the next one. As they walk off discussing the battle, Sang-yeon just watched them silently. Once he was alone, he turned with a smile toward the artifact awaiting him. He then prepared to use his unique skill and devour the crimson stone floating before him. Suddenly, Sang-yeon found himself in a mental space called the Rift of Unconsciousness, surprised by the sudden shift. Moments later, a plate of bibimbap with meat jelly appeared floating in front of him. As he sat down to eat, the system announced it was ready to absorb the crimson stone. As soon as he began the meal, the absorption started, increasing his strength and health stats by 2 points. Right after, he received a notification that he had acquired a special effect called Delay. Then the system explained that this new effect could be attached to his other skills. Without hesitation, he decided to link the Delay effect to his Demon Bash skill. The screen showed that this combination would extend the stun duration with each consecutive use of the skill. Shortly after, he returned to reality completely astonished. Checking the system window, he confirmed that his theory of a guaranteed 4-second stun was real. At that moment, Yoon Dae-kyung approached from behind and asked if they could talk, and he agreed. Dae-kyung explained that the team was in front of the Berserker Orc's room and asked if Sang-yeon would join them later. With a serious look, he declined the offer outright. Still, the man smiled and insisted it would be a mistake not to use someone like him, suggesting they work together. The rookie accepted with a handshake, but made it clear his conditions remained the same. Soon after, Dae-kyung said they were ready to enter the boss room, and Sang-yeon agreed to move forward. As they prepared, one of the team members looked directly at him and told everyone to stay alert. Sang-yeon just stared back silently. Ignoring the tension, Dae-kyung celebrated that they were in the final stretch and invited everyone to drinks after the battle. The team then entered the dungeon's boss room, where the creature crouched at the center. The monster let out a threatening roar from within the darkness. Before them stood the final boss, the Berserker Orc. Immediately, everyone watched the Orc's glowing eyes. Then Dae-kyung turned and said he would take the lead. However, Sang-yeon passed by him and told him to just follow, shocking everyone. The team leader tried to stop him, but an analysis showed the Orc's low resistance to skills made it easier to stun. With that information, he advanced toward the enemy without hesitation. As he ran, he realized he had never spoken with such confidence before. A quick flashback showed his younger self retreating during battle. Another memory revealed his struggle to survive as an older player, reinforcing his decision to never live that way again. Convinced he needed to change, he charged in and struck the shadowy creature. As the Berserker Orc prepared its attack, he focused on rewriting his past and future. To do so, he drew his sword with the intent to prove his worth. He glanced at the team, who watched from the room's entrance. With wide eyes, Dae-kyung witnessed the scene and called him a monster. Sang-yeon then unleashed a devastating strike to the Berserker Orc's chest to prove his overwhelming strength. Right after, he shouted that the boss would be stunned for 4 seconds, and the system confirmed the skill activation. At his command, the entire team charged in to attack the vulnerable monster. Meanwhile, the Berserker Orc stood completely paralyzed under the stun effect. The group unleashed a barrage of simultaneous attacks on the helpless boss. Soon the system announced the boss's defeat and the dungeon's completion, while everyone commented how the stun made it easy. In the background, 2 porters debated whether to ask the swordsman if he already had a personal porter. However, he noticed their change in attitude but ignored it as he leveled up twice and received a rank E title. With the new title, the duration of all of his status effects now lasted 10% longer. Looking at the system screen, he remarked he had never received titles in his previous life and considered this new ability broken. Even with this newfound power, he admitted he was still nothing compared to a man named Do Gyung-soo. He had been the strongest swordsman in Korea, known as the Title Collector, just 2 years after the player era began. Before the regression, Do Gyung-soo had been a level 500 monster whom the young man only admired. But now things had changed. With this new opportunity, he believed he had a real chance to catch up if he accelerated his progress from now on. Soon Yoon Dae-kyung approached and asked what he was doing, and he replied that he was just stretching. The team leader congratulated him on the good work and offered him a coin as a reward, surprising the swordsman. Confused by the gesture, he questioned him, but Dae-kyung said he had carried the team and deserved the payment. Then the leader admitted he could be generous because the item was only bronze rank, and Sang-yeon simply commented on his honesty. With a smile, Dae-kyung revealed he wouldn't have given it if it were expensive. That it was just a farewell gift. Despite the provocation, the young man took it as a victory, admitting they now lived in different worlds. From afar, one of the team members watched the scene in silence. He grew irritated seeing Dae-kyung give the swordsman more attention just for a single skill, finding it unfair. Then he picked up his phone and made a call to someone. Soon the scene shifted to the front of Shin Sang-yeon's house. Inside, he smiled as he celebrated the perks of being a player. Checking his phone, he saw that Yoon Dae-kyung had transferred 6 million, more than double the other's pay. Along with the money, he looked at the coin he had received as a bonus reward for the mission. A system window revealed the item was the Berserker Ring, a bronze artifact that increased strength by 10 points. Finally, he discovered that its special effect, Lighten, reduced the weight of all equipped artifacts at the cost of 1 mana per second. With that, Sang-Yun understood why the item was bronze rank. Most players would burn through their mana too quickly. However, he smiled, remembering he had discovered his own skill after 50 years, and that this limitation didn't apply to him. A memory showed his older self intensely studying his ability, revealing he had once devoured a mana artifact. The result of that experiment had been shocking at the time. When devouring mana items, their cost is removed in exchange for a penalty, but the special effect remains. Ignoring the penalty, he began synchronizing with the Berserker Ring, focused solely on gaining more abilities. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to a private club in the Gangnam district. Inside, the former team member insisted to a woman that Sang-Yun's stun skill was real. Suddenly, a voice interrupted him, asking why he was shouting, making him apologize immediately. The man, accompanied by another woman, asked with disdain if he wanted him to seek revenge over this. The player backed down and suggested Sang-Yun must be rich to be using an artifact, but the leader just insulted him and demanded to know what he wanted. He insisted it was a business proposal, but the commander only confirmed he wanted revenge before calling him closer. As soon as the man responded, blood spurted from his ear. With a knife in hand, the leader asked who he thought they were as he struck him. He then poured a drink into the man's wound, warning him he would pay the price for his request. Right after, the commander demanded to know where their target was. In another place, the young warrior arrived at a training field in Jamsil. While sitting down, he held his greatsword, feeling discomfort in his stomach. Remembering when he had devoured the Berserker Ring, he recalled how a cucumber soup had appeared and left his stomach upset. Even so, he smiled, realizing there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Soon after, he tossed his sword into the air to test his new skill. With a swift movement, he caught the weapon's hilt using just one hand. He swung the blade with ease, surprised at how much lighter it had become. A system window then explained that the lighten effect now reduced the weight of artifacts to 100 grams, but at half effectiveness. Even so, he decided to use it for now, aware of the risk of accidentally letting it slip. Satisfied with the result, he opened his information screen to plan his next steps. There, his current stats and newly acquired title were displayed, confirming his progress. With a determined look, he concluded that he needed to start attracting the attention of the constellations. He also thought that, if possible, he should choose one that matched his best attribute, luck. However, he acknowledged that his current stats were still not enough to spark their interest. Standing before the training dummies, he understood that for now, all he could do was improve himself. Suddenly, a white car screeched to a stop on the road. As he stepped out of the vehicle, he muttered to himself that he had almost gotten into an accident. Stretching, he reflected that despite the exhaustion from 3 days of training, he had managed to acquire a new skill. Then a system window displayed a passive called Ambidextrous Sword Training. At that moment, a portal to exclusive dungeon number 101 appeared before him. He smiled, pleased that he could now drive to a dungeon that would normally take months to reach. His gaze turned serious. In the distance, he noticed a car parked among the forest trees. Although he didn't know why, he was surprised to realize he had been followed there. However, with a faint smile, he decided to settle the matter inside the dungeon. As soon as he stepped through the portal, the silhouettes of his pursuers appeared behind him. Moments later, 3 men materialized inside the place. Then the group's leader questioned how this was possible, since the dungeon was meant for a single player. From a higher ledge, the warriors silently observed them while the leader held an object in his hand. With a defiant look, he declared that there was no mistake and that this was his territory. Suddenly, another member appeared behind the leader, receiving only a disdainful glance from him. The observer concluded this wasn't a normal group and offered them a chance to leave unharmed. Finally, he noticed their party consisted only of swordsmen and 1 archer, with no healing or magic support. He recognized the tactic of the Hyena Pack, a group specialized in hunting other players. Meanwhile, the members mocked him, warning that if he died here, his body would never be found. The warrior simply smiled, remembering that this organization had been eradicated by the Player Association's surveillance some time ago. He focused on the archer, knowing he was the hardest target in such formations. At that moment, another player was confused by his calmness. With a confident smile, the challenger declared that the dungeon was the perfect place to dispose of 4 bodies. One of the enemies unsheathed his sword, furious at the provocation. But the leader intervened and said they would do this the easy way. The other asked what that easy way meant. From his elevated position, the young man ordered them to attack all at once so they wouldn't waste time. With a sinister grin, the enemy warned him to be careful. Then he charged in, shouting for the others to silence him. The warrior faced the strike head-on, knowing the dungeon followed the law of the strongest. He also remembered that in places like this, monsters constantly lurk to hunt players, and that the competition for artifacts always put everyone's lives at risk. In this lawless environment, the weak perish, and the only way to survive is to kill. That had been the harsh lesson of his past life, a rule that still applied to the present. In the blink of an eye, he struck down the attacker, driving his sword into the ground over his body. Staring at the others, he justified it as self-defense and dared them to attack. The 3 remaining men charged at him together. The leader shouted for them to keep their distance and give cover while repositioning. Shocked by Sangho's death, the archer readied his bow and agreed to the plan. He couldn't believe a newly awakened player had killed someone at level 100. Meanwhile, the swordsman began spinning his blade at high speed, asking where the archer thought he was going. Suddenly, the enemy fired multiple arrows, calling him a damned monster. But the warrior simply watched with a calm expression. When the archer saw the broken arrow reflections in his glasses, he realized his own projectiles had been deflected back at him. Without hesitation, the challenger hurled his sword at him, finishing him off. The 2 remaining members were stunned by the unexpected move, unable to understand who this player was. The leader then noticed the opportunity. Without his weapon, the fighter was vulnerable and defenseless. The 2 of them charged together, seizing the perfect chance to counterattack. Meanwhile, the thrown sword still stuck out of the fallen body. Soon the enemies were already close to their target. The warrior dashed to retrieve his weapon, with both men on his heels. The instant he grabbed the hilt, they leaped to strike him at the same time. However, as they swung, one missed and hit his own ally lying on the ground. The players were stunned by the failed attack. With an acrobatic move, the swordsman vaulted over them, commenting that it was close. The 2 enemies looked up at him, completely shocked by his agility. He immediately recovered his sword, ready for the next strike. Suddenly, the leader grabbed his companion's hair as the man asked what was happening. He yanked him hard, using his body as a human shield. With that, the oncoming strike finished off the assassin. However, the leader's hand was cut and began bleeding as well. The warrior crouched down and asked if they were all organ traffickers, leaving the enemy stunned. He continued, claiming their real goal was to awaken mana stones for transplants. Even injured, the leader smiled and said knowing the truth wouldn't change anything now. Then he lunged forward with his sword for one last desperate attack. But the challenger only smiled and activated his demon bash skill, saying he was just curious. At that moment, the system announced the player would be stunned for 4.4 seconds, freezing him mid-swing. Completely immobilized, the leader sweated cold, unable to understand what had just happened. He remembered the small cuts he had received while using his ally as a shield, realizing the skill was broken. With an aura surrounding him, the swordsman simply declared that the fight was over. The last opponent stood paralyzed, remembering he had always been on the side that killed. A brief memory flashed of his old group united before everything ended. Then another showed a companion smiling and saying he believed in him. But it shifted to that same man, bloodied, asking why he had betrayed him. Then the scene revealed the leader as the predator, ignoring the pleas of his fallen ally on the ground. Back in the present, the victor asked the paralyzed man if he had never gone through that himself. He then questioned if he was afraid now, since it was his turn to be the prey. While wiping his sword, he lamented that he had lost the chance to gain a constellation through those actions. Even so, he tried to convince himself it had all been self-defense and then pushed the thought away. With the battle finished, he began examining the items left behind by his enemies. Finally, the system announced he had obtained 8 artifacts, and he understood that all of it now belonged to him. Right after absorbing the items, he opened his status window to check the results. He concluded that despite the risk, the reward had made it all completely worth it. Based on his new attributes, he realized he was already as strong as a level 50 player. Then he reached into his pocket to grab one more leftover item. He pulled out a ring that had belonged to one of the hunters. A system window displayed the details of the recovery ring, a silver artifact. At that moment, he remembered it had belonged to the man who had attacked him, realizing it was used to remove status abnormalities. Acknowledging the danger he had been in, he decided he would be more careful next time. As soon as he equipped the item, the system announced the start of mana synchronization with the recovery ring. Meanwhile, on the inner access road of Dungeon 101, a group of goblins patrolled the tracks. Suddenly, one of the creatures stopped and looked back, sensing a presence approaching. The hunter stood silently behind the group, holding his sword. He then put on a blindfold and began walking slowly toward the monsters. At that moment, he recalled the requirement to obtain the Lucky Day title, defeat 500 monsters while blindfolded. Sensing his approach, the goblins turned, alert and ready to attack. One of those at the front immediately reacted, signaling the rest of the group. Meanwhile, the warrior's sword began to radiate energy as he waited for their move. The creature opened its mouth and drooled, preparing to fight. Even with the blindfold on, he could feel the monsters moving around him. He began focusing intensely, sensing the airflow and sharpening his hearing. With a steady mind, he entered a state of absolute concentration, standing still while energy circulated at his feet. Ripples of energy spread across the ground as he maintained maximum focus. In the next moment, he perceived every movement around him. With the exact positions of his targets locked in, he prepared for combat. Finally, one goblin charged with its axe raised, launching the attack. But with a single motion, his sword cut down all the goblins at once. Right after, he stood still among the monster's scattered remains. With his face smeared in blood, he allowed a faint smile to appear. Suddenly, a projectile cut through the air at high speed from the darkness. It flew straight toward him, making him turn at the last instant. As he turned, he used the flat of his sword to deflect the arrow precisely. Then he caught the projectile midair with his free hand. At a distance, the goblin archer froze in shock after his attack failed. He reflected that the recent tough battles had helped sharpen his senses. With his heightened perception, he stared at the horde of goblins waiting at the tunnel's end. He made a gesture, challenging all of them to attack at once. In response, the entire horde of goblins charged at him. Without hesitation, the hunter dove into the group, slicing them down with his sword. Even in the heat of battle, he kept cutting through them with a smile on his face. Within seconds, only one goblin remained standing among the bodies of its companions. The creature trembled from head to toe, unable to move as it stared at him. Meanwhile, blood dripped slowly from the tip of his blade. With the battle finished, the system announced he had leveled up twice and earned the Rank D title Lucky Day. He removed the blindfold, remarking that the victory had felt easier than expected. While checking the luck bonuses from the title, he noticed another group of goblins approaching. Still, the vanguard of the new group stopped and stepped back, growling hesitantly. They had spotted the corpses of their fallen companions scattered across the dungeon floor. Smiling, the warrior stood before one of them, deciding to use the chance to gain more stats. As he opened his status window, he confirmed his luck stat had increased by 30 points. With his back to the enemies, he began trembling and laughing to himself at the result. He soon burst out laughing, realizing that luck boost was better than most platinum ranked titles. Suddenly, energy manifested at the end of the tunnel, and he linked it to his new attribute. Moments later, a system message announced that the surrounding environment was weakening, and he realized he could finally buy a house. He turned in surprise, not expecting that to happen so soon. At last, the system announced that 3 constellations had arrived for him: the Cleaner, the Wanderer, and the Goddess of Luck. As the 3 constellations positioned themselves, the swordsman silently observed them. With a smile, he then asked what they thought of his little performance. Unexpectedly, the Goddess of Luck floated toward him. For a moment, he questioned his own attitude, remembering he had never experienced anything like this in his past life. Soon, a system message confirmed the entity's interest in him. The system revealed that she was intrigued because she had never seen a lucky swordsman, and he replied that he had heard that before. Noticing that all 3 seemed interested, he decided to analyze each one carefully. The system then displayed the Cleaner's praise for his cruelty, which he associated with the Goblin Massacre. Next, the Wanderer showed curiosity about his intentions, and he recalled that this constellation only appeared to future saints. Based on that, he began to suspect that the Wanderer's appearance was connected to the Goddess of Luck. He remembered that she was extremely popular, even among other entities. The goddess herself then stared at him for a moment. After that, she sent him a message promising that she could make a contract with him later, even if he chose another constellation now. He realized how incredible that offer was, recalling the story of an archer who hit targets in the void. That story was about Hashimoto Yuki, a miracle archer, whose power and luck were so immense that his feats were thought to be rumors. He remembered that the archer's accomplishments were only possible thanks to 2 contracts, one of them with the Goddess of Luck, who made the impossible happen. Facing the 3 entities, the swordsman said he needed time to think about his choice. The system then reported that they insisted he choose his destiny, while they were already arguing among themselves. Even while acknowledging the Goddess of Power, he knew this decision would shape his entire future as a player. He recalled that in his past life, only one constellation had approached him, and that was after 10 long years. That entity had been the late blooming model student, and its appearance had seemed like salvation back then. He remembered how overjoyed he had been, believing he would have a bright future ahead. But despite the hope, nothing changed, and his path remained the same until he was 55. He eventually realized it was because of the constellation's absurd requirements, which demanded extremely high levels to unlock its powers. In the end, it was thanks to that same entity that he had gotten the chance to regress and start over. Back in the present, he decided he had to be careful, assuming he wouldn't get another chance to return to the past. With his decision in mind, he turned to the Wanderer and considered his holy powers. Then he looked at the Cleaner, pondering his destructive might. Finally, he gazed at the Goddess of Luck and the option of choosing the luck attribute. Bathed in intense light, he prepared to announce his final choice. Without hesitation, he pressed the button to accept the offer, and a system alert confirmed the contract with the Goddess of Luck. The system informed him that the contract would remain valid for 30 years, even if he died during that time. As a being from another dimension watched, 15 friendly constellations congratulated him on his choice. At the same time, 3 hostile entities declared they would do everything to stop his progress, leaving him confused by all the interest. Even so, he ignored the threat and decided to move forward with his decision. He reached out to the goddess, wishing good luck to them both in this new partnership. His hand gently touched hers, sealing the pact between them. With the contract sealed, a system message conveyed the entity's praise for his wise decision. Right after, a new status window appeared as she asked him to choose a wish as the contract's effect. Faced with 3 extremely powerful skill options, he froze for a moment, unable to believe what he was seeing. The system even revealed a fourth bonus effect, and the goddess explained it was all thanks to his hard work. Soon after, she asked what he would do about the other two constellations still waiting. The swordsman dismissed the other two, saying he needed to focus on his new goddess. The wanderer promised to wait while the cleaner threatened him, and he just laughed it off. He concluded that with these new powers, he didn't need to worry about the near future and should relax for the next opportunities. Sometime later, he finally reached the final boss room of Dungeon 101. Inside, he began an intense battle against the enemy, exchanging powerful blows with the creature. Meanwhile, the goddess of luck watched the fight from afar. The warrior leaped over the monster, provoking it to fight more seriously. Then he came down with his sword raised, ready to land a direct blow to the enemy's head. The greed-consumed goblin lord blocked the strike with its weapon, roaring in response. Moments later, the monster countered with an attack he managed to block using only his arm. After the strike was defended, the creature released an aura as its eyes glowed fiercely. A system notification announced that the Goblin Lord had inflicted the oppression status abnormality on him. Even with the penalty, he smiled, realizing the effect had finally activated. He knew that ability wasn't lethal, but it could forcibly reduce the target's will to fight. Still under the aura's influence, he simply whispered recovery to activate his ring. The next instant, the Goblin Lord struck the spot where he had been, shattering the ground. When it realized the attack had missed, the creature looked around, not understanding how he had escaped. He concluded that the skill couldn't completely stop a target's movement, so he reasoned it would only be useful against weaker enemies. At that moment, the system announced recovery and activated, removing the oppression effect just in time for him to test his luck. The creature spun around to face him, roaring again. He dodged another attempt at oppression and asked if the monster really thought that would work again. Then he activated Demonic Strike, stunning the Goblin Lord for exactly 2 seconds. With only 2 seconds, he gathered energy for his next blow. He unleashed a flurry of strikes on the enemy, triggering another stun for 2 more seconds. Soon, a system window reported that the first effect of delay had been activated, extending the stun for another 2 seconds. He seized the opening to attack the creature. Right after landing the hit, the system announced the second effect of delay had activated, prolonging the paralysis again. Finally, he smiled as he realized the effect had worked a second time, while the goblin panicked in paralysis. With the monster completely immobilized, he delivered the final blow with his sword. Right after, he simply watched the body of the Goblin Lord collapse before him. As soon as the body hit the ground, the system announced he had cleared the suffocating swamp of the Goblin's dungeon. In addition, the novice informed him that he had leveled up and obtained the rank E title, Don't Touch Me. With the battle finally over, he knelt on the ground to check the details of his new title. As he caught his breath, he reflected on recent events and questioned if he was pushing his body too far. Then the goddess of luck appeared and commented on his luck, but he replied that people would just assume it was all skill. She agreed that luck was also a kind of skill, and he noticed how quickly she had changed her opinion. While the entity insisted it was all thanks to her, he decided to spend his status points on luck first. When he checked the result, he was shocked to see it had already gone over 100. Granting him bonus effects. He then used his evasion stat as an example to explain how the bonus worked in practice. After that, he glanced at the shield left behind by the enemy, remembering that his luck increased artifact drop rates. Still, he commented to the goddess that it didn't matter much since she would guarantee him items anyway. He then wondered if raising luck could influence the rank of the items obtained, just as he touched the shield. Mana synchronization with the Shield of Cutness began, and he concluded his new constellation would be much livelier than the last. Sometime later, the hunter Shin Sangyuman arrived at the mission area near Jamsil Station. Inside, a receptionist firmly denied the request he had just made, but he tried to explain that he had his own plans and asked her to reconsider the decision. Even so, he stood firm, saying he wouldn't let this stop him. The scene then shifted to 2 hours earlier, when he was driving on the Hanam Expressway. As he traveled, he commented that he was glad to have bought rice and kimchi to eat on the way. Suddenly, the car began shaking and spewing smoke from the hood without warning. Moments later, several warning lights lit up on the dashboard as he tried to understand what was happening. With the vehicle breaking down, he realized he would need new transportation and a new place to live soon. He reflected that his current lifestyle left him vulnerable and concluded he couldn't keep living in constant fear. To make things easier, he considered buying secondhand equipment to complement the artifacts he already had. He fell silent for a moment, processing the situation. He concluded that he needed money to solve all those problems, and he realized he needed a lot of money, something he could only get in one place. He remembered that with the appearance of the system came missions and an organization to manage them, so he decided he would get what he needed through the system controlled by the Player Association. Soon after, he accelerated his car toward the mission arena, determined to arrive as fast as possible. Back in the present, the receptionist insisted that he choose an appropriate dungeon since he didn't even have a rank yet. Even so, the hunter argued that he was confident in his skills and that low-level areas would be a waste of time. The clerk then began crying, begging him to go to a lower-level zone and avoid ending up like other players. Despite her pleas, he stood firm in his decision, determined not to back down. Suddenly, a woman approached and asked what the problem was, leaving the receptionist speechless. A system window identified her as Kim Miso, a level 100 player from the Eden Guild. He immediately recognized her as the famous Devastation Sniper. He remembered she was the first player to reach level 100 and was the daughter of the president of Shinsun Biotechnics. He also recalled that Kim Miso, the assassin Shin Terry, and the swordsman Cho Jinho, one of the strongest in the country, were all members of the same guild. So he understood that this woman was the daughter of the majority shareholder of the corporation behind the Eden Guild. Kim Miso approached and said she had never seen him around before. Then she asked why he was interested in a level 100 mission, and he simply replied that he needed the money. As other players whispered about his attitude, he listened to everything in silence. The archer warned him about the difficulty of the mission, and he confirmed that he was aware of the risks. Then he justified his choice with the saying, "High risk, high return." He recalled how in his past life he had once been rejected when trying to join her group. Kim Miso then asked if he knew the mission didn't allow solo players. At that moment he realized his mistake, remembering that the restriction wouldn't be lifted for another 4 years. Awkwardly, he apologized, saying he must have read the notice wrong, and thanked her for the information before turning away. Seeing this, the sniper smiled and decided to make a proposal. She invited him to come with her on the mission, leaving him stunned. The offer shocked the other players, who couldn't understand why she invited him. Even without knowing her motives, he asked what condition came with the invitation. She said she only wanted to help a fellow player, but he admitted he had trouble trusting people. However, Kim Miso said there were no conditions, but instead he would have to make her a promise. With a serious look, she warned that if he disappointed her, he would have to pay for it. Still, she promised she would sincerely apologize if he proved his worth, and he simply agreed. With a faint smile, he realized she only wanted to test him. He remembered her enormous influence, which went beyond the game and could destroy the career of anyone she deemed just an overconfident player. So he looked her in the eyes and suggested they leave immediately, accepting the challenge she had proposed. Kim Miso said goodbye to her driver and told him she might take a while, and he confirmed he would wait. That day, she had realized that most of her guild members were busy and that she needed new companions. By coincidence, the archer had a specific reason to need a party at that exact moment. It turned out that the regulations about the minimum team size for missions were a big inconvenience for her. At that moment, she noticed a confident player arguing with the receptionist and became interested in the situation. Seeing the scene, her interest in him only grew. She then asked the receptionist what mission Shin Sang-yeon was trying to accept. When the screen appeared, the employee pointed at the details and the young woman reacted with surprise. She quickly saw it was a defense mission against 300 monsters, with a recommended level of 100. That type of mission required eliminating every creature and was recommended for a group of 4. Turning to her with a smile, Sang-yeon asked if she was nervous. The archer seemed confused for a moment, but then remarked that he didn't seem worried at all. She suggested they wait for more people to join, maybe a tank or another ranged attacker. Suddenly, he took her hand. Then he guided it to the screen and accepted the mission, saying there was no problem at all. A burst of blue energy marked their departure as the other players watched. Worried, the receptionist silently prayed nothing would happen to her, since Miso was going with him. Right after, one of the players wondered if they would succeed, while another doubted a rookie could win. Still, one pointed out that the youngest plus-ranked player wouldn't be foolish. The conversation shifted to the association's new ranking system, created to measure strength beyond just levels. The first criterion for classification was the number of dungeons a player had cleared. The second criterion was based on each one's overall battle sense. They explained that Kim Miso had achieved a plus rank purely through her battle sense, surprising one of the listeners. The reason was simple, and a plus rank meant there were still monsters stronger than her. Even so, the most attentive player noted that this wasn't the main point. What mattered was that Shin Sang-yeon had just entered the dungeon with her, which they all agreed was pure luck. They were then transported to the defense mission, in a city under a dark, stormy night sky. Positioned on top of a building, the archer prepared her bow. She decided she would take responsibility for her words and help him if the danger became real. Meanwhile, Sang-yeon waited calmly in the middle of the empty road. Even so, she hoped he would learn a lesson from this chance. 30 minutes earlier, the hunter had asked her not to interfere unless he called for help, offering her 5% of the reward. Thinking she had misheard, she listened as he repeated that it was a good deal for her. Kim Miso confronted him, saying it was impossible for him to handle 300 monsters alone. She argued that the mission was difficult even for her, and she was already level 100. She went quiet for a moment, still stunned by his confidence. With a smile, Sang-yeon told her to just wait and see what would happen. Then the archer proposed getting 1% more for each monster he failed to kill, but he warned she'd get nothing if 95 of them slipped through. Back in the present, the first monstrous wolf appeared on the road and growled. Facing the threat, the hunter declared that her deal wouldn't come true and planted his sword into the ground. Staring at the creature, he announced he would take care of them all alone. 3 wolves charged at him at once. Watching from above, Miso didn't seem to understand what she was seeing. With a single swift motion, Sang-yeon swung his sword and cut the 3 creatures midair. He landed as the monsters dissolved into particles behind him. Smiling, he commented on the sounds the creatures made when dying. Meanwhile, the archer watched and realized his strikes had no flaws at all. His stance emphasized superior reach, creating perfect balance. just as Cho Jin-ho always mentioned. He avoided unnecessary movements and felled multiple enemies with every swing. Even so, she still believed he had a long way to go. After all, the number of monsters was enormous, not something a level 17 player could handle. The swordsman just turned his head with a faint smile. Suddenly, Miso noticed something strange about the monster's behavior. Then the demon bash skill activated, and the wolves around him froze in place. Eyes wide, she wondered if he had stunned them with a skill. Startled, she stepped forward and nearly fell from the rooftop. As she regained her balance, more monsters were cut down in the background. Once she steadied herself, she was certain he had used a stun skill. The effect lasted 4 seconds. Longer than Cho Jin-ho's, giving him enough time to kill them all. As she tried to figure out who he was, Sang-yeon kept slicing through the paralyzed wolves with ease. In the middle of battle, something unexpected caught the swordsman's attention. He noticed a wolf that hadn't been stunned charging straight at him. Even with several wolves already dead around him, a new presence finally revealed itself on the battlefield. With a confident smile, he identified the creature he had been waiting for. The black wolf emerged from the aura and lunged forward fiercely. The creature opened its mouth in a roar, releasing its energy. Though he had never faced the black wolf before, it seemed strangely familiar to him. Suddenly, a system notification stated he was under the same stun effect he had used. A wave of purple energy spread throughout the area, striking everything nearby. However, the archer was protected by her artifact, which freed her from the negative effect. She realized the black wolf could also use the stun ability. She prepared to act, realizing she had been criticizing him while he was actually in danger. As she worried, a new notification appeared saying the stun effect had been removed by recovery. Immediately, the swordsman broke free from the paralysis with an explosion of energy. His solid stance, long stuns, and instant recovery left her unable to understand how it was possible. Miso could hardly believe that a level 17 player could also cancel negative effects. Once freed, he charged at the black wolf and asked if the creature was surprised. Taking advantage of the monster's confusion, he slid under it and drove his sword into its body. The beast's brief hesitation gave him the opening he needed to pierce it with his blade. With that, he finished it off in one precise motion. As it whimpered, the creature seemed frozen as if under the stun effect. Moments later, the black wolf collapsed, defeated, in the middle of the road. The monster's body fell on top of him, and he complained about getting his clothes dirty. Even covered in filth, he said that since he was dirty anyway, he might as well have a bit more fun. From atop the building, the archer watched everything in silence. With a smile, she asked out loud who the hell that man was. The system notification showed that 299 monsters had already been defeated. As a result, he leveled up several times and earned the title Fearless, which protected him from negative effects caused by wolf monsters. Then he rose from the pile of fallen creatures. From above, the archer continued silently observing his every move. Sang-hyun looked up at her, noticing that she now seemed to believe in his abilities. With his sword in hand, he prepared for what he called the grand finale of the mission. Moments later, the final boss appeared before him and he stared at it, asking if the creature was ready. The enemy, identified as the Full Moon Wolf Lord, roared with all its might, immediately attacked with its claws in a devastating strike against the ground. He leaped forward, recalling that the beast specialized in irregular attacks. Then he revealed that after 30 years, all of its attack patterns had already been analyzed. With that, he predicted the movement and drove his sword straight into the monster's eye. A notification stated that his demon bash skill had failed due to the boss's resistance, sending him flying back. Seeing this, Miso called him insane, pointing out his ability to break through stun resistance. In addition, he could wield the heavy sword with incredible ease, blocking the creature's strikes. The Wolf Lord lunged with a powerful bite, but he blocked it with his blade. Even under pressure, he held firm and pushed the beast back. With another roar, the monster attacked again with ferocity. He stopped the creature's claw strike, creating a burst of sparks. The archer noticed that he also seemed to know all of the boss's irregular attack patterns. It was clear he already knew everything, as if he had fought it countless times. Watching this scene, she also noticed something else about the battle. With a smile, the swordsman made obvious that his attitude was meant to prove his strength directly to her. Miso smiled back and shouted, asking who he really was. The clash sent him sliding across the bridge rail, scattering sparks. After landing, he realized the battle was lasting longer than expected. With no more tricks to impress her, he should have been exhausted by now. Even so, the beast leaped in for another attack as he wondered about its seemingly endless energy. With his health dangerously low, he feared he might collapse before the creature did. Suddenly, something caught his attention in the middle of combat. During the attack, he instantly recognized a very specific pattern of the beast. The monster used his powerful strike as bait, preparing a piercing counterattack. With that, he dodged the signature move that had claimed countless players' lives. Realizing the situation, he decided it was time to use a skill he had not shown in battle yet. Suddenly, he landed a blow that severed when the wolf wolf's forelegs. Without hesitation, the creature began focusing more energy into its remaining limb for another strike. From above, Kim Miso froze completely at the sight. Then the impact of the blow sent him flying violently backward. The shock made her fall to her knees on the rooftop. She screamed Sang-yeon's name, realizing she had no right to consider herself a real player. Even though he had shown such strength, she knew she had let her guard down and allowed this to happen. As she blamed herself, a mysterious green light began to surround her completely. Startled, she stared at the light, not understanding its origin. At that moment, a notification revealed that the shield of Cutness he had absorbed had disintegrated into ashes forever. With the item's destruction, the special effect Sacrifice was obtained, converting all damage into healing and fully restoring his health. In a flashback, Shin Sang-yeon analyzed the Sacrifice skill and realized he would need to choose a body part to apply it to. A system window appeared, requiring him to select one of 16 specific points on his body. Even considering the back as a safer option, he noticed the choice was more complex. Since the back was divided into 4 sections, he concluded it would be inefficient and chose the front instead. Back in the present, the green energy confirmed the skill had worked, fully restoring his health. Completely recovered, he stood up and taunted the creature, saying that if he had missed even slightly, it would have been the end. He then used Demon Bash again and saw that this time, the monster was completely paralyzed. By severing its right foreleg, he had finally broken the creature's resistance to stun. Holding his sword, Sang-yeon prepared to test his luck to the very end. Meanwhile, Kim Miso finally descended from the building and landed on the road holding his coat. With the creature paralyzed, the swordsman finished it off, noting that his skill had only worked on the 3rd attempt. Standing over the boss's body, he considered the result good enough as she approached. He turned and remarked that she had finally come to meet him. Kim Miso stopped in front of him, holding the coat he had left behind. With a sigh, she said he could have warned her about the healing skill, as she really thought he was done for. She then asked how he knew all of the monster's attack patterns, wondering if he was living a second life. After that, she said that despite meeting countless players, he was the first to surprise her like this. She began to say it was as if something was happening, but stopped halfway through her sentence. Finally, with a smile, Shin Sang-yeon challenged her to finish what she was about to say. Standing beside the defeated monster, the young man repeated the question to her. After a moment of hesitation, the girl felt a strange pressure in the air and finally answered. She said it was as if she had just watched a high-ranking player in action. Hearing her response, he felt relieved that she hadn't considered the possibility of regression. She then asked if he planned to finish off the mission's boss. The creature was still alive, pinned by the sword and letting out a faint sound. Turning back to the monster, the warrior apologized for the distraction and promised to end it. After the final blow, he received the rank C title Duelist, which boosted his stats during isolated combat. As he analyzed his first rank C title, his partner commented that it looked like he had received the reward. With a smile, she asked if he already knew he could clear the stage alone, and he confirmed that he did. Even so, the girl seemed a bit skeptical of his answer. Soon after, she admitted she had only won thanks to her artifact, but he argued that getting good items was also a skill. She thanked him for the compliment with a discreet smile. Still, she revealed her artifact cost over 200 billion, making the comparison to his ordinary sword unfair. With light irony, the young man suggested she should use this chance to test the effects of his new title, leaving her puzzled. At that moment, a notification confirmed that the Duelist title had activated, since he was the only person nearby. Laughing, she stepped closer to him, which instantly canceled the title's effect. Then she said she had to go first to call her porters and collect all the loot. Watching her, he concluded he had managed to leave a good impression on her. Suddenly, she turned and said she would give up her 5% share of the reward of shocking him. Even as he protested that it wasn't fair, she insisted he shouldn't refuse the offer. With a smile, she explained that it was an investment in him, as they might work together again someday. As soon as she said goodbye and left, he concluded he truly couldn't let his guard down around her. With everything settled, he turned to collect his reward, which was glowing on the ground. The reward was the Blue Moon Stone, a platinum accessory that increased health, mana, and luck. He began trembling with pure excitement as he held the item. With a victorious shout, he celebrated finally obtaining a platinum artifact. Crouching, he held the stone, thinking that its value could finally buy him an apartment. Soon after, a notification from the Goddess of Luck appeared, but he replied that this was the result of his own luck. Then, another constellation protested against his fortune, and the system suggested banning the goddess, leaving him confused. Even so, the Goddess of Luck called for a vote among the constellations, which quickly began to swing in her favor. In the end, by unanimous decision, the other constellation was banned from the system, to the goddess's delight. Holding the stone, he commented that he had forgotten how popular she was. He then decided to absorb the artifact, noting its special effect that increased mana and health regeneration by 5 times. With that, he concluded he would become invincible against those moonlit monsters as the synchronization with the stone began. Soon after, a blue portal opened in the mission area's lobby. Wrapped in energy, Shin Sang-yeon passed through the portal back to the lobby. Upon returning, he noticed something unexpected in front of him. A crowd of players was gathered, all watching and commenting about him. One player asked the receptionist if he had really cleared the dungeon, while another confirmed Kim Miso wouldn't have reason to lie. Moments later, Kim Miso herself appeared and told the receptionist not to worry about the situation. She defended her, explaining that everyone had done their best to stop him as expected. Soon after, a man beside them suggested the receptionist pay close attention to Shin Sang-yeon, as he would soon become a familiar face there. Hearing this, the young man felt a little guilty about nearly forgetting her. Suddenly, recruiters from various guilds surrounded him, offering contracts to join them. But Kim Miso quickly stepped in and told the recruiters he had business with her. One of the men immediately asked if the Eden Guild was interested as well, and she confirmed with a smile. Even without understanding her plan, Shin Sang-yeon agreed and followed her away from the commotion. Soon after, the two of them left together in a limousine. Inside the car, you receive a notification of a 500 million won mission reward deposit. Kim Miso commented on how fast the payment was as he looked at his phone in satisfaction. She explained that everything went faster thanks to A-rank porters and her own influence. He thanked her for handling everything. Suddenly, her tone shifted to something more serious and she addressed him formally. At that moment, a barrier activated inside the vehicle, shifting the environment to a secret mode. Seeing this, he silently confirmed to himself that there were always hidden intentions behind acts of kindness. Then Kim Miso said she would get straight to the point. She formally invited him to join the Eden Guild, but Shin Sang-yeon stayed silent for a moment in front of the proposal. Kim Miso took his attitude as confidence and emphasized that the Eden Guild was known as a paradise. Watching her, the young man confirmed to himself that he had already expected this situation. Then he remembered how, before his regression, he had belonged to a small guild that took him in when he had nowhere to go. That memory led him to the incident that resulted in the destruction of all his former companions. With that in mind, he concluded that at his current growth pace, working solo was the best way not to be held back. But just as he was about to decline the offer, the girl interrupted and asked if he planned to create a solo guild. Caught off guard by her deduction, the regressor froze for a moment. Seeing his expression, the president's daughter commented on her own sharpness and reminded him of her corporate background. She added that with his skills, deducing his plan hadn't been difficult. Then she pointed out that the most important thing was that only she knew about this plan for now. Still, Sang-yeon realized she already knew everything, yet still laid her cards on the table and showed genuine interest. Understanding her move, he recognized that this cunning negotiator had just formed a relationship of mutual benefit. Soon after, the scene shifted to player City C, near Jamsil Station. There, a woman confirmed the details of a contract with a deposit of 100 million and monthly rent of 5 million. The young man commented on the intimidating price, and the realtor replied that he had gotten a great deal. After finalizing the agreement, the woman said goodbye and told him to call if he needed anything. Once she left, he noticed how quickly everything had been handled and attributed it to his luck. Now his few belongings were stacked in a corner of the new apartment. He then walked to the window to take in the view. Opening it, he reflected on how much had happened in such a short time. His mind drifted back to the regression and the confusing days he spent trying to understand it without success. At first, he hadn't known how to move forward, until his entire way of thinking changed, and a long-forgotten feeling began to return. Blood seemed to flow through his body again, even though he hadn't done anything yet. Clenching his fist, he felt the youth in his body. Yet his past memories reminded him that this chance in his hands would not let him stay still. So he swore this time he would live differently, not pathetically as before. With this new determination, opportunities for growth began to appear, and the scene returned to the Harris talking to reporter Park Jongmin. The young man recognized him as a famous S-rank journalist from the Player magazine. On the other end of the call, the reporter said he knew about the regressor's presence and mentioned the place was in an uproar. As the journalist began praising the player, the young woman asked him to get straight to the point since everyone was staring at her. Right after the call ended, the car arrived at its destination in the city. Thanking her for the ride, the young regressor stepped out, only be called back by the Harris. She invited him to explore an unconfirmed gate in a free team of up to 4 players under level 120. Before she could even finish the sentence, he accepted the invitation on the spot. Seeing his reaction, she remarked how he had coldly rejected the guild offer. Then she asked why he was so excited about the gate, and he admitted it was his chance to finally enter one. It became clear that dungeons were fixed places, with set entrances, exits, and predictable patterns. Gates, on the other hand, were described as dynamic locations where entrances, exits, and even monsters could change during exploration. After all, the rule of the player world was clear. The greater the danger, the greater the reward. And unconfirmed gates offered a bonus system that guaranteed a high-level artifact on the first clear. From that, he concluded she must have gotten the Black Wolf artifact, which ignored stuns from one of those gates. The young woman said she would contact him with detailed information, and that they would be talking a lot from now on. To his surprise, she held out a device and asked him to enter his number. But when he took it, he caught a glimpse of the lock screen, which showed a memorial photo. She quickly apologized, explaining she fumbled while trying to unlock it for him to type his number. While adjusting the device, she murmured to herself that her mind was a mess. So the young man simply watched her silently. Back at his apartment, he concluded she seemed to have her own problems, just like every player. He soon remembered his own past, one that could never be spoken of openly. He wondered what would happen if anyone discovered his regression. Then the image of a hooded figure holding a book came to his mind. He wondered what those people were doing now. Even after all those years together, he admitted he wished he could see their faces one last time. Meanwhile, in the Eating Guild's VIP room, the young woman sat across from a man. The man complained that she was focused only on her device, waiting for a message instead of talking. She explained she was exchanging messages with the regressor to prepare for a gate. Even with her denial, the man continued, noting that he could maintain stuns and had still refused the guild's offer. He warned her to start worrying about herself, but she didn't understand why. The man laughed loudly when the Harris said the young man's swordsmanship was impressive, maybe even better than his. With that, Cho Jinho, the S-rank level 700 player, replied that regardless of the case, comparing the boy to him was an exaggeration. The scene then shifted to training field 4 to 3 in Jamsil. There, the young regressor answered a call from the Harris to discuss the appearance of the gate. She confirmed she had time and informed him about an unconfirmed gate near Chunni Station, sending him the already gathered data. As he asked for a moment to review the information, Yoon Dae-kyung watched from a distance. Reading the details, the young man couldn't hide his surprise. The screen showed information on the gate's mid-boss, Cerberus, a 3-headed monster. Realizing this, he noted it was a chance to use his new passive ability that prevented canine monsters from attacking him. After thanking her for the news, Dae-kyung complained about being called there just to watch him answer a phone call. A man nearby immediately apologized to the captain, but Dae-kyung corrected him, saying to call him by name now that the regressor was a celebrity. At that, the young man downplayed the situation and Dae-kyung assumed he hadn't seen it yet. Confused, he watched as the captain handed him his own phone. The screen displayed a cover story about him in the Player magazine and Dae-kyung declared him famous. Shocked, the young man asked what that was, while the other told him to check his own phone, which should be flooded with calls. Looking at the notifications, he complained that he hadn't wanted to be on the front page and wished someone had warned him. Yoon Dae-kyung then asked if everyone who knew him was calling already, but he replied that wasn't the case yet. Deciding to handle the calls later, he got straight to the point with the captain. He asked about the item they had agreed on, and Dae-kyung showed him a bag. After thanking him for the delivery, he heard the reminder that it wouldn't be for free. Dae-kyung then asked why he wanted his old artifacts instead of simply buying new ones. Using the excuse that it was to admire their history, the young man didn't convince him. The regressor chuckled and explained it was just superstition, unable to reveal that older items had better absorption rates. At that moment, a woman approached, apologizing for being late. She said she had trouble parking and asked if they could start the appraisal. When he asked who she was, Dae-kyung introduced her as the appraiser who would help with their deal. Then the captain gave him a quick hug and said he brought her only to ensure fairness for both sides. The appraiser began her work, making the artifacts emit energy. Soon the process finished and a system notification confirmed the artifact appraisal was complete. The woman sighed in relief after finishing her task. She said the deal would be fair for both sides, and Dae-kyung confirmed he just wanted to be sure. Before finalizing the deal, the captain drew his sword and made a request to the young regressor. He asked him to evaluate his swordsmanship. The young man tried to refuse, saying he wasn't good enough, but Dae-kyung insisted he stop being humble. The captain then admitted he wasn't stupid enough not to notice that the regressor was far above his level. Even with his persistence, the regressor stayed silent, reluctant to get involved. But after a moment, his expression changed completely. The shift in his posture made the captain swallow hard. The young man said it wouldn't be polite to ignore someone who just wanted to do their best. He instructed his opponent to forget his presence and show everything he had, making Dae-kyung ready to begin. Then he asked the appraiser to stand behind him for safety. With a shout, the swordsman began demonstrating his skills. He unleashed a series of fast strikes with his blade. Watching the movements, the regressor noticed Dae-kyung had grown much stronger since the last dungeon. However, he identified an important flaw in his technique. The captain continued with a wide circular slash, but the young man suddenly stopped him, making Dae-kyung ask if he was already done, since he got more to show. He touched his opponent's left arm and asked if something was wrong with it. He explained he had noticed Dae-kyung's excessive caution with his left side whenever he attacked with his right. Stunned by the accurate observation, Dae-kyung was speechless for a moment. He then admitted the reading was correct and confessed he had trauma about defending his left side. He explained most of his injuries had been concentrated there and he couldn't fix the problem. The regressor said he could fix it. He advised him to stop hiding his weaknesses and find a way to embrace his strengths. Adjusting his grip on the sword, he warned the change would be hard but bring long-term benefits. He told the captain to apply more pressure with one finger while the appraiser watched confused. When Dae-kyung complained about pain, the young man told him to endure a bit more, making the observer awkward. Hearing that it hurt but was getting better, the appraiser wondered what was going on with the two of them. The training continued with the captain struggling under the regressor's instructions. Watching closely, the appraiser questioned what exactly she was witnessing. A short time later, a white car was driving down the street. While driving, the regressor thought that the 400 million won deal had been good, since the benefits would be much greater. He soon remembered Dae-kyung's satisfaction with the lesson and the strange look on the appraiser's face at the end. With that, he decided he would call the Harris, eager to absorb the artifacts and see his progress. Suddenly, something ahead caught his attention. The car braked sharply, almost hitting two men standing in the middle of the street. As he got out to apologize, one of them asked if he had finally arrived. The man banged on the roof of the car and said he was tired of waiting for him. With an aggressive tone, he ordered the young man to get out of the vehicle. While the other man complained about his reaction, the regressor stood there confused by the situation. Then energy began to manifest around the aggressor, catching him off guard. Without needing to talk, the man gave him the choice to get out or burn together with the car. At that moment, the young man finally remembered who Choi Yong-kil and Cho Sang-ho from the Utopia Guild were. He recalled how Yong-kil attacked weaker players to create content with the help of his lackey, Sang-ho. The memory ended with the news that after crossing the line and committing crimes, the aggressor had been sentenced to life in prison and forgotten. Seeing that the young man wasn't moving, Sang-ho commented on his paralysis. With his memory complete, the regressor concluded that both of them were awful people, while they laughed and wondered why he was so annoying. Even though he wanted to test his progress with the new artifacts, he regretted that it would have to be against people like them. Facing his calm attitude, Choi Yong-kil glared at him with disdain. In response, the young man got out of the car and drew his sword. With an air of authority, Yong-kil introduced himself as local security and claimed he had received complaints. He explained that the complaint was about someone driving a low-quality car in the area. Without warning, he kicked the car door, saying others didn't want to be associated with such a vehicle. After the attack, the thug asked if he finally understood the situation. Then he threatened him, saying to grab his things and leave if he didn't want the car destroyed. From a distance, two people watched and recognized Yong-kil and Sang-ho being aggressive again. One of the onlookers paused to take a closer look. Recognizing the victim, he realized it was the player from the cover of the Player magazine who had been with the Harris in the mission area. Then the observer finally remembered his name, Shin Sang-yun. On the other side, Sang-ho asked Yong-kil if the boy was strong, mentioning rumors that he had cleared a level 100 mission alone. Yong-kil scoffed at the rumor, saying the regressor looked weak. Sang-ho reminded him that Kim Miso had been with him, suggesting she wouldn't have let him take all the credit. Right after, the thug said he already had a title for their next video, while the regressor checked the damage on his car. As Sang-ho began recording, he announced the title, Teaching a Lesson to the Rookie Kim Miso Carried, and Yong-kil said he would show a bit of mercy. He proposed a duel in training mode. If he won, the boy would leave the player city and appear in their video. Faced with the livestream challenge, the young man countered that if he won, it would stay away from him forever. The swordsman accepted the deal immediately, praising his spirit. With a serious expression, the regressor added 500 million won and Yong-kil's wrist to the bet, telling them to back out if they were scared. Shocked by the new condition, the thug was interrupted by Sang-ho calling him. Annoyed, he snapped at his lackey for bothering him, but Sang-ho insisted he look at something important. He showed him the chat, which was flooded with messages supporting the 500 million bet. Seeing the public's reaction, the brood hesitated, while the regressor pressed him for an answer. Then Yong-kil realized the video wouldn't be monetized because of the violence and adult content. Seeing his hesitation, the young man decided to use the chance to relieve stress and ask what was wrong. The scene then shifted to Building C Plaza in Player City, where both prepared for the duel, surrounded by a crowd. As the crowd watched, some confirmed it was the regressor and commented that Yong-kil was just acting like always. Then the system announced the training mode between the two players was active. The thug confirmed that the 500 million bet and his wrists were on the line, saying he always kept his word. Sang-ho warned him not to beg for mercy later, while the notification confirmed the training battle could begin. Once Sang-ho said the mode was ready, the young man took a deep breath to prepare. Facing him, Yong-kil declared he didn't play around and said to start. But when his lackey called him again, he turned to answer. At that exact moment, the regressor dashed forward, ready to strike. He declared that he didn't play around either, and wouldn't forgive him even if he begged. The live broadcast captured the sudden attack for all viewers. And watching the scene on a television, the Harris recognized the young man in surprise. While trying to understand what was happening, Kim Miso watched the broadcast. She remained silent, observing the scene closely. Then she recognized Yong-kil from the Utopia Guild and remembered the rumors about him being the guild master's nephew. At that moment, a woman approached and asked if something was wrong. The player Shin Terry, an S-rank level 700 warrior, asked why she looked so serious. Right after, Terry looked at the screen and recognized the young man in the broadcast. She asked if that was the player Miso was trying to recruit, and the young woman confirmed it was the regressor. After watching the fight, the warrior commented that his movements looked very good. Back at the plaza, Yong-kil roared in response to the attack. Then he'd accused him of cheating and charged forward, but the young man dodged and countered. While forming a fireball, the thug called him a liar. Moments later, he hurled the energy sphere at his opponent. The regressor, however, blocked the attack with his sword. Seeing it blocked, Yong-kil froze for a moment. Then the young man sliced the energy sphere in half with a single strike. The final slash caused an explosion. While recording, Sang-ho muttered, wondering who that guy was as the chat filled with confusion. Satisfied with the result, the swordsman felt content. For the first time since regressing, he realized his body was moving exactly as he wanted. The scene then flashed back to 3 hours earlier. when he thanked the appraiser for finishing the deal quickly. Hearing his gratitude, the woman reacted strangely, leaving him confused. Then Daekyung suggested they go drinking to celebrate and offered to pay for everything. However, the young man refused, saying he had another commitment. Disappointed, Daekyung asked if it was because of the money and offered to return part of it. The regressor explained he already had other plans and apologized, leaving Daekyung looking let down. As the man suggested the two of them go alone, the regressor picked up the bag and said the event waiting for him was more exciting than alcohol. He then said goodbye and watched the two hurry away. A little later, the swordsman sat alone on a park bench with the artifacts. He opened the bag and took a deep breath, ready to begin the process. The system calculated the absorption rate of the bronze rank equipment at 10%, but increased it to 90% due to the item's time of use. Staring at the 90% rate, he was surprised as the goddess of luck appeared beside him. The system explained the blessing was thanks to her, and he concluded the prior use of the equipment made all the difference. He then took the chance to ask the goddess about her popularity as a constellation. Next, he asked if she had ever heard of a constellation called the Late Blooming Model Student. The goddess immediately scolded him for paying attention to other constellations instead of focusing on her. Seeing her reaction, the regressor tried to start an explanation. With a serious look, he admitted that specific constellation meant something to him. Even so, he apologized and told her to forget it, understanding her reaction. Soon, a system notification said the goddess of luck had granted him permission to raise his head again. Then the system announced she would look for the information out of generosity, and he thanked her for the help. With that settled, the swordsman grabbed one of the artifacts to begin absorption. He held the shining item ready to enjoy what he called a wonderful meal. The system announced the start of mana synchronization for the 5 artifacts, which manifested as plates of food. As the 5 favorite dishes of men appeared, his hair turned white as he watched the banquet. Even though the artifacts had belonged to an older man, he noted the manifested food was appealing to younger men as well. Confirming that all items had a 90% absorption rate, he wondered how much stronger he would become. Back in the duel, the scene showed the activation of the face-off title, which isolated Yangqiul's effects from everyone but him. His status window displayed a huge increase in strength, stamina, mana, luck, and defense. Meanwhile, his opponent began trembling, and the chat commented on his apparent exhaustion. The regressor just watched him in silence for a moment. Then Yangqiul leaped and threw down a powerful fire punch from above. Watching the scene, Miso warned him to be careful, while Terry stayed calm. Terry remarked that he would probably dodge it without any problem. As the blow came down, the swordsman prepared his counterattack, hoping the opponent hadn't forgotten something. He moved aside, dodging the fire punch at the last second. Then he declared that the 500 million and the wrist were his now. Seeing the move, Samo assumed the young man had fallen into the trap. Just then, the regressor stepped on an ice trap on the ground that activated instantly. Yangqiul smiled victoriously at the triggered trap. Shrouded in shadows, the thug declared his own victory. As soon as the trap activated on the ground, the system confirmed that the forced freezing skill had been applied to Shin Sang-yun. Even as ice began forming on his body, he remained unfazed. Seeing the scene, Shin Terry wondered if Choi Yangqiul could use other magic besides fire and thought it might actually work. At that, Kim Miso chuckled and told the young woman to listen carefully to what she had to say. She revealed that the warrior had the ability to remove negative effects, which was the reason she wanted to recruit him. As she kept talking about bringing him into the organization, the observer's expression changed. Back on the broadcast, the screen showed the battlefield completely encased in a massive block of ice. Seeing it, the appraiser called out his name, not understanding what had happened. Choi Yangqiul also stared at the ice, wondering where his opponent had gone. Then he reassured himself that the skill had activated, and that escaping was impossible without effect removal. At that moment, the swordsman appeared above him with his blade raised, making him question if he was even a rookie. Without hesitation, he swung the blade down in a strike that hit Choi Yangqiul cleanly. However, the blade stopped just before hitting its mark, and he simply asked what was going on. A system notification soon explained that training mode had mitigated any fatal damage, sparing his opponent. As the dust settled, Cho Sanlo called for his companion while the chat filled with comments about the effect removal skill. A comment made Sanlo realize that the swordsman looked different from before. He noticed the completely new aura radiating from the warrior as he stood over the fallen man. Shrouded in energy, even Shin Sang-yun himself wondered what had just happened. Watching the stream, Shin Terry identified the phenomenon as a type of awakening skill. To Kim Miso's surprise, she speculated it might be either transcendence or psychedelic, leaning toward the latter. She then explained that this type of skill caused exhaustion when taking damage, noting his confidence in winning without getting hurt. However, Kim Miso said he hadn't used any such skill when he was with her. Hearing this, Shin Terry pointed out how valuable the ability was and offered 2 possibilities. First, that he simply hadn't needed to use it. Kim Miso asked what the second possibility was. Shin Terry stayed silent for a moment before answering. She concluded that the other possibility was that he had a way to obtain rare skills in a short time. Meanwhile, The appraiser seemed worried at her desk. She reviewed a document about the crimson meditation bracelet the swordsman had bought, wondering if he needed to be tested for a hidden skill. The document revealed that the item's hidden ability was psychedelic, with an extremely low chance of manifesting. She questioned whether it was even possible to manifest a skill with such low odds and what kind of luck it would take. Finally, she concluded he must have been chosen by the goddess of luck herself, who appeared watching the fight while eating popcorn. A system window detailed the psychedelic ability, which restored HP and activated an awakened state for 100 seconds. Facing Shin Sang-yeon in his awakened state, Choi Yong-kil invited him to turn off training mode and try again. He then broke free and stepped back, regretting letting his guard down, thinking his opponent was just a rookie. Preparing to get serious, he slammed the ground and created a shockwave. As he was thrown back, he realized he needed distance and that this wasn't the same as what Cho Sang-ho had told him. He admitted to himself he never would have started this fight if he'd known the opponent's true strength. Dust from the blast hit the spectators, who reacted in shock. Amid the confusion, he concluded his companion had just been making things up. Without giving him time to react, the swordsman appeared before him and declared it was time to end the fight. Then he struck him with a powerful downward slash, declaring the duel over. While holding him down, he reminded him that training mode would prevent any fatal damage. Faced with the threat, the combatant surrendered and declared his victory. After agreeing to send the money, Shin Sang-yeon said the bet was settled, and then it was time for his revenge. At that, the defeated man asked what he meant by revenge, not understanding. With his opponent immobilized, the young warrior said it had all started because of him. The scene flashed back to 3 days earlier in a repair shop, where a mechanic told him that even with the repairs, the car would soon have to be scrapped. Surprised, the man explained the vehicle was simply too old and wouldn't last much longer. Even with the owner insisting, he emphasized he would have to say goodbye soon. He then commented that the car had surely been happy to have him as its owner. The memory shifted to an imaginary conversation with the vehicle, where he cried as he heard it say it had always been happy by his side. In the vision, the car said goodbye with a final request that its owner live happily. Back in the present, Shin Sang-yeon shouted that this was revenge for his car and began punching him. Choi Yong-kil begged for forgiveness while trying to shield himself from the blows. The crowd reacted in disgust as colorful, surreal effects burst out with every punch. Amid the bizarre effects, the swordsman stayed emotionless, watching. He continued striking, each impact creating more of the colorful effects as the chat filled with confusion. Lying on the ground under the relentless blows, Choi Yong-kil sobbed and apologized through tears. Amid the confusion, Cho Sang-ho and the spectators began complaining about the awful stench spreading through the area. Realizing they had messed with the wrong person, he concluded the channel didn't matter anymore. At that moment, a man called his name, making him turn around in shock. Recognizing Moon Baek-in, the regional manager of Utopia Guild, he could only stammer a reply. Facing the authority, Cho Sang-ho apologized repeatedly. Moon Baek-in then analyzed the scene, noticing how a newly awakened player had managed to defeat a veteran like Choi Yong-kil. He soon called out to Shin Sang-yeon, who turned to see who it was. The manager approached and offered to handle the situation and compensation, asking if he had time. Without answering, the young man asked him to state his name and who he worked for. The attitude caught Moon Baek-in off guard, who initially found it arrogant. However, he quickly reassessed, concluding it was the confidence of someone with experience and skills far beyond his level. He then formally introduced himself as the Utopia Guild's manager and decided he needed to recruit him. Next, he offered the guild's contact to cover the damages, but Shin Sang-yeon simply asked if he was serious. In response, he showed his account number and said that 2 billion won would be enough to cover the mental trauma. Looking at the veteran lying on the ground, Moon Baek-in calmly agreed to the amount. On the floor, Choi Yong-kil was sleeping like a baby. Sometime later, Shin Sang-yeon's apartment doorbell rang as the reporters outside stirred. The moment he opened the door, they bombarded him with questions about his dealings with the Utopia and Eden guilds. Even with nothing to say, he told them to leave, but they pressed in with more questions. The crowd of reporters demanded that he stop avoiding them and tell the whole truth. One of them asked about his relationship with Kim Miso, and he wondered if his love life was really their business. Entering his apartment, he decided he had too many other worries to think about dating. Leaving the reporters behind, he began preparing for what was coming next. He calmly organized his clothes and gear on the bed. While stretching, he recalled how hectic the week had been because of the gate raids suggested by Kim Miso. Still feeling confident in his progress, he opened his status menu to check his improvements. Besides his stats, he noticed that the skill Demon Bash had also leveled up, and he calculated the new duration of its effects. The screen displayed the details of his Demon Bash and Dual Wield training skills, both now at level 2. With a smile, he confirmed to himself that the improvements didn't stop there. He prepared to analyze the full results of his recent efforts. The screen showed the details of his new skills, blade handling training, and full charge, which concentrated energy into a powerful strike. He concluded that his new containment plan and movement skill would be enough for the gate raid. Soon he reflected on how his performance in the last battle was still below his past self. The memory took him back to the fight against the Wolf Lord, a risky gamble due to the beast-limited combat patterns. Then he remembered how he had been caught easily by Choi Yong-kil's trap, because he lacked a movement skill. He realized he could have died if those opponents had been a little stronger. His resolve hardened with the decision not to repeat the same path as in his previous life. Recalling the second collapse of 2040, he reaffirmed his need to ensure a different future. In this new life, he couldn't lose everything again like last time. To prevent that, he had to become far stronger. His goal was to reach the person who had saved him in the past. Just then, his device rang beside him, breaking his concentration. Answering, he was surprised to hear reporter Park Jungmin on the other end. The journalist called to confirm the interview scheduled for that day, and he realized he was in trouble. As he hurriedly confirmed the meeting place, he admitted to himself he had completely forgotten about it. Checking the time, he saw the gate raid was at 7 and the interview at 2. Then he noticed it was already 1:45 and panic set in. Leaving his apartment, he was confronted by the reporters still waiting outside, pressing him for answers. As the door opened, a powerful aura surged around him, and the reporters froze. Shrouded in his energy, he activated the psychedelic skill to boost his speed and shouted for everyone to get out of the way. Meanwhile, Park Jungmin waited at a cafe, fiddling with his device. Suddenly the bell rang and he turned to the door in surprise. Seeing Shin Sang-yeon arrive still radiating aura, he called out and said he had already ordered coffee. The reporter invited him to sit as the aura dissipated. Breathless, he thanked him for the comment about looking interesting. When asked if he had just come from a dungeon, he denied it and said getting there had been harder. He then apologized for being late and sat down, but the reporter assured him it was fine. With that, the interview began, mentioning the recent events in the mission area. He pointed out that regardless of what he thought, he was now the center of attention among all players. Finally, he explained that with his sudden appearance and low level, people were calling him a super rookie. Sang-hyun tried to downplay it, but the journalist asked about the many guilds interested in recruiting him. He confirmed receiving many calls, assuming he meant the Eden Guild or other local guilds. Park Jungmin corrected him and revealed he meant foreign guilds, leaving him completely stunned. He explained that a total of 5 foreign guilds had officially requested verification of his identity. Then he advised him to stay on guard, as it was the first time they had shown so much interest in a rookie. Shortly after, the scene shifted to the alleys near Chunmi Station, where the gate was expected to appear. As he walked through the area, he lamented his solo guild plan upon realizing foreign guilds were on another level. Remembering his past suffering, he found the current situation unbelievable, until someone called his name. It was Kim Miso, waving from a distance and calling him over. Even without understanding, he heard her say they still had some time before the gate appeared. However, his attention was immediately captured by the person standing beside her. The three of them met under the light of a street lamp in a secluded alley. There, Kim Miso explained that her sister wanted to meet him and that she had brought her before they entered the gate. She then formally introduced her as Shin Terry, also a member of the Eden Guild. After a moment of silence, the newcomer observed him and suggested they go to a nearby cafe. She extended her hand for a handshake and introduced herself, receiving his name in return. As he shook her hand, Shin Sang-yeon immediately recognized the famous player known as the Shadow Assassin. He remembered how her popularity extended overseas, being one of the main reasons for the Eden Guild's influence. With that, he noted how lucky he was to encounter high-level players after his regression, until Shin Terry asked him for a favor. Caught off guard by the request, he wondered what she could possibly want, but agreed to help if it was within his reach. Hearing his reply, the young woman said it was nothing major. Then she proposed they have a sparring match, leaving him momentarily speechless. At her proposal, Kim Miso questioned what kind of favor her sister was asking from someone she had just met. A brief flashback showed Kim Miso explaining the need to recruit him, while Shin Terry decided she wanted to test his strength. The older sister then apologized to Shin Sang-yeon, explaining that her sibling liked challenging people for fun. To their surprise, he said he didn't mind the challenge. He soon suggested they start right away, and Kim Miso protested by calling his name. As Shin Terry prepared herself, he declared it would be an honor to fight a high-level player. Hearing that, his Shadow Assassin praised her sister's eye for people and apologized for her behavior. She then manifested her weapon and proposed they exchange about 5 moves, asking him to tell her when he was ready. He agreed, recognizing it as a chance to evaluate his growth and find what he still needed to improve. Seeing her manifest only her weapon, he noticed how her surrounding aura already felt completely different. He decided not to waste time and drew his own blade. With glowing eyes, he activated the psychedelic skill and declared he would go all out from the start. The sudden shift in atmosphere left Kim Miso confused, unable to follow what was happening. Then Shin Terry announced she would make the first move and dash forward. She vanished in a blur of speed, leaving only a trail of energy behind. Caught off guard by her speed, Shin Sang-yeon realized his vulnerability. He concluded that with his current physical abilities, he couldn't rely on reaction time to anticipate her strikes. When Shin Terry reappeared and attacked, he managed to block her blow at the last second. With the blade inches from his face, he understood the only way to win was to predict everything. Surprised by his defense, Shin Terry expressed her amazement at his skill. After deflecting her strike, Shin Sang-yeon parried a second blow coming from above. She praised his movements and decided to try a bit harder. Then Shin Terry reminded him there were still 4 moves left and lunged again. She unleashed a barrage of swift strikes from every direction. Noticing she was getting even faster, he concluded his opponent was a real monster. So he closed his eyes, deciding to use a new strategy. As he had done in the past, he chose to completely ignore his vision. Instead, he focused solely on reading her movements by instinct, knowing it would be much harder. Kim Miso watched, unable to understand his decision. She concluded he was being reckless to close his eyes before such a superior rival. With his eyes shut, his hair turned white, and she questioned if this wasn't just stupidity. Still motionless, he waited for the right moment to react. At the exact instant of her attack, he moved and blocked the strike perfectly. The Shadow Assassin praised his incredible focus and for stopping the second blow. She added that most swordsmen never reach that level of concentration. She explained that such a feat required experience to back up the skill, making him wonder if she knew more than she said. As she compared him to a veteran player, she leaped back, leaving him speechless. After stating there were 3 moves left, Shin Sang-yeon took the chance to ask if he could also request a favor. He thanked her, which she agreed. Then he proposed they skip the remaining 3 moves and end the spar with one all-out attack. Shocked, Shin Tae asked what he had just said. Even admitting his own arrogance, he justified that this was an opportunity he might never get again. So he formally asked for one last strike. He admitted that if he didn't experience what she was truly capable of, it would haunt him during his training. Despite Kim Miso's protests, her sister agreed. She explained she couldn't use her full strength but would show him her maximum speed. He replied that just keeping up with that pace would already be a success. With the decision made, Shin Tae got into position, treating it as a real fight. She prepared to attack, approaching the duel as a matter of life or death. With no time to think, he decided he had to be ready already. Instead of simply swinging at her, he decided to strike at space itself. He launched his attack before she could even get close. Caught off guard by his unexpected strategy, the warrior showed a brief moment of surprise. Right then, the system notified him that the Shadow Illusion skill had been activated. Even with its activation, her reaction surprised him even more. At the last instant, Shin Tae struck him with the butt of her weapon. After the hit, she stepped closer and asked if he was okay. While Kim Miso watched carefully, saying he was fine, he still questioned her for resorting to using a skill. Felt lying on the ground, Shin Sang-yeon complained about a headache and wondered if his nose was broken. Soon after, he stared at the girl silently for a moment. Shin Tae then apologized, explaining that using her skill had been a reflex, and asked if he was okay. She extended her hand to help him up. Once he stood, he thanked her for taking the fight seriously, and she replied that the pleasure had been all hers. Then he stepped closer and suggested that next time, maybe they could have a serious talk, leaving her momentarily surprised. Although surprised, he agreed, and a young woman said she would call them later while Kim Miso watched. At that moment, their supervisor interrupted, reminding them that the time for the gate raid was approaching. The scene focused on her face briefly. Kim Miso ordered the subordinate to write a full report of what happened, and she apologized. Soon after, Terry bid farewell and wished her superior good luck on the raid before leaving. As he watched her go, Sang-yeon concluded that this had been his first loss since regressing, and that he wouldn't have stood a chance if she had fought seriously. Because of that, he kept watching her walk away and set her as his next goal to surpass. Still, the young woman looked back for a moment before continuing on her way. He took that look as a challenge, an invitation to try as much as he could. Shortly after, an unidentified gate manifested at Chunmi Station. Standing before the gate, Kim Miso suggested they start with brief introductions. She then presented the 2 people who would be joining their team. Shin Sang-yeon introduced himself politely, and the other player reassured him, saying they came to see the famous guy from the news. The newcomer introduced himself as Park Tae-seok, a level 120 rank, a mage specialized in the Ignite skill. Confirming it was the same skill type as Choi Yang-cheol's, the mage added a note. He then manifested a blue flame, explaining that his flames were much stronger because he had focused all his time on them. Even so, Park Tae-seok admitted he was still at the blue flame stage and had a long way to go. Seeing his demonstration, the regressor reassured him, saying he seemed reliable and that focusing on one thing was the right choice. He recalled how Choi Yang-cheol had been easy to defeat because he spread his efforts across many areas without mastering any. Kim Miso then prepared to introduce the other player. She revealed her as Kang Joo-hee, a level 110 rank, a mage specializing in space construction skills. As soon as the introduction ended, Kang Joo-hee began demonstrating her powers, but was interrupted. Suddenly, the wave of energy she released struck Kim Miso, who complained. While their leader scolded her, Sang-yeon noticed the winds generated were different from what a space manipulator should create. Then the energy expanded and transported them all to the top of a building, leaving him surprised. Kang Joo-hee explained that this was her skill. He extended his hand to greet her, and the mage bowed while wishing the best for them both. Seeing the team formation, the young man concluded that Kim Miso had assembled the perfect combination. With him for close combat and their leader at range, the team was completed by Park Tae-seok as firepower and Kang Joo-hee as support. Beyond the formation, he also noted their team chemistry. Watching them talk, he realized this wasn't their first time working together and how important that was for survival. It made him remember his old team, where their lack of coordination had been a source of ridicule. The memory left him quiet for a moment. Concerned, Kim Miso approached and asked if he was okay. Then she asked if he had been injured during the fight with her sister. He reassured her, saying he was fine and just thinking about something they could discuss later. So he suggested they enter now and focus on the present. The team then stepped into the unidentified gate, revealing a frozen landscape known as the Ice Inferno. The four of them began walking through the snow. As they advanced, the regressor thanked Park Taesiak, who didn't understand why. He explained that without the blessing of Flame's skill, they would all be frozen by now. Hearing this, Kim Miso and Kang Julie also thanked him, and the mage said it all worked out in the end. Soon, their leader noticed his second weapon and asked why he hadn't used it last time. He explained that he had just acquired it, feeling he'd need it for battles that required more mobility. At her surprise, he simply said he put in some effort to learn to use it. Then Kim Miso called Kang Jui. As soon as a giant monster appeared, their commander ordered them to execute Plan C. Kang Julie agreed and began preparing her skill immediately. The creature roared and lunged with an attack. The impact triggered a massive explosion at the site. Right after, Sang-yeon and Kim Miso leaped onto the monster. While they were midair, the archer said she was awaiting his orders. He shouted for her to cover his rear. As soon as the monster roared, Shin Sang-yeon prepared for the attack. While the creature continued its roar, he and Kim Miso dove straight at it. The archer readied her bow and shouted Park Taesiak's name. The mage promptly answered her call and conjured a blue sphere. Right after, the glowing arrow was fired, descending at high speed. Behind it, the swordsman plunged with his blade, following the attack's path. Fortunately, the strike hit the creature's face directly. In response, the monster screamed and the young warrior delivered the finishing blow. He used his sword to end it. After the strike, he immediately shouted Kang Jui's name. The mage quickly responded, preparing to use her skill. Meanwhile, the creature opened its mouth to roar again. At the moment the monster attacked, he didn't notice the incoming strike. The creature hit the ground and caused a massive explosion. His sword was still lodged in his hand. Thinking he had won, he began to smile. But Sang-yeon mocked the creature, asking if it really thought he had been defeated. Then he charged in, ready for the final blow. Seeing the opening, Park Taesiak told Kang Jui get ready to attack again. Soon, the level 2 Demon Bash skill activated, and the monster roared as the effect struck it. The swordsman watched the result with a smile. Taking advantage of the opening, he severed the creature's head in a single strike. The sudden move left both the mage and the witch stunned. After landing, the regressor admitted the fight had been exhausting. His teammates then asked what had just happened. Park Taesiak explained they hadn't expected a single strike to be enough and apologized. Kim Miso reassured him, saying there was no need to apologize. They were just surprised. She added that she had the same reaction the first time she saw him fight. Then she said she was sure he still hadn't shown everything he could do. Under the pressure, the swordsman averted his eyes for a moment. While the team talked about their good coordination, he reflected on how much experienced players made a difference. With a good feeling about it, he prepared for what was coming next. He soon suggested starting the second round as more monsters approached. The scene then showed several enemies defeated, scattered across the snow-covered ground. After the battle, Park Taesiak praised him, saying he was the best swordsman he had ever worked with. Sang-yeon only thanked him, while Kim Miso laughed at Taesiak's reaction. She explained that the mage rarely got the chance to use his abilities at full potential. Sang-yeon concluded that without a reliable swordsman, mages had to rely on support skills. Even understanding that, he still felt overwhelmed by all the praise. Then Kim Miso asked him about the skill he had used earlier. She admitted that he always managed to surprise her. Suddenly, a burst of energy caught the group's attention. The archer readied her bow as the mage conjured his flames and a shadowy monster roared in the distance. Seeing the threat, her expression turned serious. She warned everyone that an armored demon was approaching from the front. While Park Taesiak looked concerned, Kim Miso suggested they focus their firepower on the enemy. Then she turned to Kang Jui, who didn't understand what she was about to be asked. Sang-yeon asked if it was possible to open a portal directly in front of the monster. Even with their leader warning that the creature specialized in defense, he charged in without hesitation. Seeing him preparing for something, Kim Miso decided to trust his plan. She ordered Kang Jui to open the portal, and he leaped through it the moment it appeared. While crossing through space, the warrior activated the full charge skill to gather a massive amount of energy. The impact of his landing caused an explosion that blasted the others back and cracked the ground. Emerging from the portal high above the enemy, he saw the creature's shock at his sudden appearance. Then his precise slash split the monster in half. Park Taesiak and Kim Miso stared in complete shock at the display of power. With a smile, he confirmed the skill was real. After regrouping, he explained that he had only used the technique so aggressively because he trusted the team. Then Kang Jui told them to be quiet so they wouldn't be detected. They all hid behind a rock, and she whispered that they had arrived. From their hiding spot, they observed snow-covered ruins and a creature wreathed in blue flames. The enemy was identified as the mid-boss, Cerberus of the Ice Inferno, who still lay dormant. While planning their next move, the mage suggested opening an escape portal in advance. Park Taesiak proposed starting with a fire attack, but the swordsman already had another idea. Upon seeing the creature, he finally found his ideal target and activated the passive skill, the Era of Night and Wolves. Hey everyone, did you enjoy the story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys.